All right. So my official title is Chief Storyteller. That's something I made up. But today I am going to share with you my family's incredible story and how I've been sharing that with the world, online and off, and the amazing things that has led to. So my story begins, I was adopted from Honduras as a little boy. I was 2 years old. Grew up with a family in the Boston area. I grew up with a little brother, Derek. We had a very normal childhood. We went to Red Sox games and watched the Yankees lose. We also went to summer camp and just had a very normal upbringing. And then one day when I was 16, we got a phone call out of the blue. And it was a man by the name of Robert Kirshner, and remember that name because it's important later. But Robert Kirshner called my parents to tell them that there was this family in El Salvador looking for me. And he told us this incredible story, which I'm sharing with you, that I was not from Honduras like we thought, but I was from El Salvador, and that my parents had been revolutionaries in the Civil War in El Salvador. My father was a bodyguard to one of the prominent members of the party, and my mother was responsible for logistics, getting people and supplies in and out of the country. He told us that a couple months after I was born, my mother's picture appeared in the newspaper in El Salvador as a wanted criminal, and so we had to flee. We escaped to Honduras, where her and 11 other people kidnapped a businessman and held him for ransom. And this is the way that they made money at the time. It was a form of financing their operations, and they'd hold them for hostage and then let them go when they got the ransom. So, having no other choice, she took me with her, and somehow the Honduran government found out about the safe house where we were staying, and they stormed it. We don't know exactly what happened, but we do know my mother did not make it out alive. So, I was orphaned at that point and put into a private orphanage where I stayed for about a year before being adopted to the US. So when I was 16, I learned about my past and I learned about this incredible story. And over the course of the next 10 years or so, I went down to Central America several times and I got to know this other family. And growing up with a story like this, there's sort of one big question that just looms in the back of your mind. And it's, what do you do with this? What do you do with a story that in some ways is so big, so grand that, you know, they say real life is greater than fiction, you know? And so around 2010, I decided to write a blog, to start writing about my experiences. At the time, it was really to help my mother, my adoptive mother, as she wrote a book about our history and how this incredible thing unfolded. So I started writing, and with the help of my older sister, who I had met in the reunion in 1997, we wrote about our experiences, what we remembered, our feelings, what it was like growing up in this really strange, incredible world that we had been given. And for the most part, it was just me and her writing our feelings. And then one day in, I think, 2008, I got a Facebook friend request from someone by the name of John Younger. And I didn't really know who he was, but we had mutual friends in common. So I said, whatever, let's accept. He sent me a note afterwards saying, hey, I was your camp counselor the very first year you were at camp, almost 20 years ago, and I just wanted to connect. I said, oh, that's nice. So about 2 years afterwards, he sent me another message, and he said, you know, I saw a post that you wrote, and you used the name Nelson Roberto, and that was really interesting to me, and I wanted to learn more. So he ended up going to my blog and reading more about this story that I that I was telling. And he said to me, you know, this is amazing, and I've been working in television and TV production, and these are the type of stories that I got in the business to tell. So if there's any help you need with anything at all, just let me know. And so at the time, I was doing interviews with my parents and broadcasting them, just experimenting in how I could use the web to help tell this story. And so he sent me some audio equipment, and we did an interview with my parents, and he loved it so much, he said, you know what? This could be a documentary film. I said, you know, sure, why not? You have a lot more experience in this matter. Let's go for it. And I thought it was another way for me to share and tell this story. You know, again, what do I do with it? And I have to share it. So in the fall of 2010, we launched our first Kickstarter project to get funding for the film. We ended up raising about $15,000, which we used for equipment and other things. And it was very interesting to see how our friends and family just pooled together, and you could see the project being shared across Facebook, different networks. First it was my camp friends, then it was my high school friends, then it was my college friends. And so that was very interesting. And around this time is when I met Jeff Pulver. And he graciously invited me to speak not only at Boston, but at LA, Detroit, and small town in Hutchinson, Kansas. And you know, Jeff always says, you're here to meet one person. And when I was in LA, I met that one person. His name is Filiberto, and he just loved the story so much. He was very moved by it. And he said, next time you're in LA, let me know, and I'll help you organize something. So about a year later, I was out in LA again, and I said, hey, Filiberto, I'm here. And he says, all right, let me introduce you to the Salvadoran community here. So he set up an event at at KPCC, which is one of the public radio stations there. And there were members of the Salvadoran community and some press, and I did an interview with someone. Little did I know that this person worked for, or was writing for the Huffington Post, and they put the story on the front page of the Latino section of the Huffington Post. A couple days after that, the article appeared on AOL.com, and the comments blew up, and there were all these people talking about it, and that was a very interesting experience. And then, a couple days later, I get an email from someone named Josh Kirshner. Turns out this was the son of the man who called us all those years before. And Robert Kirshner passed away in 2002, but they now do a memorial lecture at the University of Chicago. And we, my mother and I, my adopted mother and I, were invited to speak. So 2 weeks ago, we were in Chicago, and we were speaking at an event in memory of the man who reunited us, which I thought was very cool and very meaningful for us. And so what I've sort of learned in this journey to share my story is that, you know, Jeff often makes reference to digital breadcrumbs. I think that's what happens, is you leave all these digital breadcrumbs or ripples, and it goes out, and you have no idea where it may lead. And so what I think is amazing for me is that I'm still very much in the middle of this journey to share my story, and I've yet to see where all of those ripples lead. But it's also given me a sense that I think the Twitter and social media and the internet in general is not so much about being connected to a lot of people, but it's about connecting. And I thought that's a very interesting way of looking at it, that it's not about how many people you know or how many followers you have or that kind of stuff, but it's really about the connections that you make both on and offline and where those connections lead. Thank you very much.